Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Alhamdulillah, today we were talking about a very important incident that happened in the life of Musa alayhi salam when he accidentally killed a man, and then he lived with that trauma of having that guilt. And you can imagine when a person commits a sin, the guilt that stays with them, which is a good sign of iman. But having killed somebody, it definitely left a scar with Musa alayhi salam, and he had to deal with that for the rest of his life. And even on the Day of Judgment, in fact, it stayed with him, because we know of the beautiful hadith where the Prophet mentions that on the Day of Judgment, people will be running around between prophet to prophet, asking them to request Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to start the Day of Judgment. And different prophets would say certain thing about their weakness, something that they weren't happy with themselves, and they would say that go to someone else. And Musa alayhi salam would remind people that I had killed a man, and that's a scar that he will remember that even on the Day of Judgment, and he would say, go to someone else, I can't help you. And the hadith continues until they reach the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who will go in sajda, and the Day of Judgment will start. But the point here is, how do we, and we saw what happened with the death. I'm sure everyone's aware of the very hard to absorb death of multiple people in the family. There could be trauma in that family, and how we deal with trauma, and how we live through that trauma. And some people are not able to get through the trauma, right? And the results are very catastrophic. So how do we live with trauma and still be someone as great as Musa alayhi salam, right? So that's the point, is he was able to live with that. It's not that it went away. It stayed with him, it bothered him, but he still was the best version of himself. And that's why Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentioned that sometimes committing a sin or an act of disobedience brings a person closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas a good deed takes a person away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can see here that Musa alayhi salam immediately, when we're not going to go in the story of how the two people were quarreling, and the person he tried to help, it was the same person that exposed him the next day by saying, are you going to kill me like you killed the person the day before? So that's somebody in our youth term would call him, that's a punk. Someone who just has no morals, no ethics or personality, and he just ratted out Musa alayhi salam the next day, the same guy who Musa alayhi salam was helping. But you notice that the second time Musa alayhi salam sees the same incident happening, he's already learned from his lessons from the previous incident, and he is coming with the intention to understand the situation. In the previous scenario, he went with who he thought was being oppressed, that he must be the person that needs to be helped. But it ended up being that the oppressed person who seemed to be oppressed was the troublemaker. So Musa alayhi salam learned from that. And one thing that I wanted to highlight today, though, is his constant connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any situation, and particularly to really help you absorb 4 situations. So Musa alayhi salam would ask for forgiveness after he has killed that man. So that's immediately he returns to Allah. Then right after that, he makes a commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's another dua, where he tells Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'll go over that real quick, that I will never be on the side of the criminals. This is a commitment he makes to Allah as he's learning and he's becoming, and he's not a prophet yet. So all of this is already happening before he has become a prophet. After that, he is told to flee from Egypt and get out of that place, because Fir'aun and his company are planning, and there will be no actual justice provided. He will basically be executed, because they were just looking for an excuse to get rid of Musa, because we know Musa was Bani Israel, and he is the only anomaly who is living among the Fir'aun and the castle of Fir'aun. So he was already, a lot of people had their eyes on him, that how come he gets that treatment and he's only Bani Israel. So they were just waiting for the opportunity to get rid of him. And so now he's fleeing away from the people of Egypt to Madian, and again he makes dua to Allah. And then he goes to Madian, and he sees 2 women who need help. Right? So he helps the woman. He's exhausted, you can imagine. And the ayah indicates that he didn't know exactly where he's heading. He just knew the direction of Madian that he needs to get to. But even after getting there, he sees the 2 women need help, and he does not make an excuse. He tries to help them. And immediately after helping, he's exhausted. He sits down and he makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those 4 du'as I wanted to share with you guys real quick. So first one, قال بسم الله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قال ربي إني ظلمت نفسي فاغفر لي فغفر له إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. This is a dua he makes after he has killed the man, that, oh Allah, my Rabb, indeed I have wronged myself. He accepts, he knows that he's wronged himself. He doesn't say, he doesn't blame anyone else but himself and takes responsibility. Then he asks for Allah for forgiveness, and please forgive me. Indeed, you are the most forgiving, the most merciful. In that note, there's a dua that the Prophet used to teach us, which sounds very similar to this, that we should try to memorize. And this is something he would remind us to do before the taslim, before we say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is a dua the Prophet taught us, and you'll notice it has similar wordings. Allahumma inni zalamtu nafsi ظلما كثيرا ولا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت فاغفر لي مغفرة من عندك وارحمني إنك أنت الغفور الرحيم. So inshallah we'll try to memorize this dua. This is in Sahih Muslim. O Allah, I have indeed oppressed my soul. And look, this is the Prophet ﷺ saying it, that I have indeed oppressed my soul excessively. ظُلْمًا كَثِيرًا وَلَا يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ, and nobody forgives sins except for you. فَاغْفِرْ لِي مَغْفِرَةً مِنْ عِنْدِكَ, so please forgive me from your mercy and your forgiveness. Surely وَارْحَمْنِي إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ, you are the most forgiving, the most merciful. Second is the dua when immediately after making this dua, where there's a request, please forgive me, then he makes the following statement, which is also a dua. And the lesson that you're going to see here is there's no request. In this dua, there's no request. He doesn't ask for anything, but it's still a very powerful dua. قَالَ رَبِّي بِمَا أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيَّ فَلَنْ أَكُونَ ظَهِيرًا لِلْمُجْرِمِينَ. O Allah, for the favor you have bestowed upon me, now that you've forgiven me, I will never be assistant of a criminal. That's a pact, and I ask you to witness this, that I will never be on the side of a criminal. So I will be very watchful, and I will always do the investigation and make sure that I'm not on the side of the criminal, even if it is from his own people. He will provide justice to whoever deserves justice. In our case, sometimes we might give a preference to a Muslim, but what Islam expects from us is even if it goes against your family members and a non-Muslim might be right, then you need to provide justice, not take sides of anybody, even if it's family members. So that's the beauty of Islam. But here, what was that? It was an innocent person, the person that they were quarreling with in Bani Israel. So there was a man from Bani Israel, and he was in quarrel with another person who seemed like, when you look at it from a bird's eye view, that this person is oppressing the Bani Israel individual. So Musa alayhi salam tried to come to aid the Bani Israel. Naturally, he had inclination to help his own people, and he looks like he's being oppressed. But it turns out that person was a troublemaker, because the next day he's quarreling with another person. And so in the first incident, Musa alayhi salam goes up, and the word used in the ayah is wakaz. And it means that basically you have your fist, like you have your hand closed, and he just pushed him and didn't realize his own strength, and it was an accidental killing. So we wouldn't call that murder, because murder has intent behind it. So that's how that incident happened. And we were talking about today, interestingly, the next day when he goes up to that same individual who's causing trouble again, that man exposes Musa alayhi salam. He says, are you going to kill me like you killed the person before? So it's like the day before he's helping you, and now you're the one exposing Musa alayhi salam like that. But in that ayah, Allah uses a different word for hitting, because you can see that's the type of hitting where your hand is open. So the scholars commented how Musa has already learned from his mistake, that he's not going with a closed fist. He understood his own strength, and next time even the word used for hitting is actually open-handed. But he was just trying to absolve the situation, but this man thought that he's going to kill him, and he exposed Musa alayhi salam by making that comment. So in this now, the second statement, what's very important to realize is dua for many of us is limited to asking Allah for something. But if you go through the Quran, you realize that dua was way more than that. It was just a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here, he doesn't really request for anything, but it's a very powerful dua. And let's end here, inshallah, there will be two more du'as that I wanted to touch upon, but let's look at Zakaria alayhi salam, right? So notice, I'm going to just go through the ayat, and here he's about to ask Allah for a child, right? Because he's a prophet of Allah, and he wanted to make sure that the message of Islam continues after him. So he's old, but when he noticed Maryam alayhi salam is receiving rizq in summer, she's getting fruits of winter, and winter vice versa. So he realized that the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he needs to make dua, even though he's old and his wife is barren, but he's still going to make dua. But if you look at his wording, he's just having a talk. He's just conversating with Allah. And after 5 statements, he finally makes the request. So what's he doing for the 5 statements is just him talking to Allah. That is how dua should be. It's just a conversation. So he says, ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا إذ نادى ربه نداء خفيا قال ربي إني وهن العظم مني واشتعل الرأس شيبا ولم أكن بدعائك ربي شقيا وإني خفت الموالي من ورائي وكانت امرأتي عاقرة فهب لي من لدنك وليا. That's the dua. فهب لي من لدنك وليا. So in English, he mentioned, O Allah, O my Lord, indeed my bones have weakened, my head has filled with white hair, and never have I been in my supplication to you unhappy. You're always there for me. Indeed, what else? Indeed, I fear the successors after me, and my wife is barren; she can't give birth. Like, why? What's going on here, right? There's no request. It's just him talking to Allah, opening up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having a conversation, and then finally, so please give me a child, right? So that's one thing we learn is Musa alayhi salam knows the power of dua, and what's beautiful is something very eye-opening is he's not a prophet yet. So where is he learning this from? We talked about at Fajr, I think on Monday, the importance of Tawheed at the bottom level, and then we go up the pyramid. We're going to talk about that at the the conference that's coming up with Sheikh Abdullah and others for back to school. And very amazingly, it's actually not Asiya alayhi salam, because we know Asiya is the one that protected him, but it's actually his biological mother that was teaching him the importance of talking to Allah, dua, trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, forgiveness, and knowing the tricks of shaitan. He was actually learning that from his own mother. So the mother plays such a key role, and she built that structure for him. The bottom structure we're talking about, the main important thing is tawheed and dua and understanding the power of Allah. After that, he was able to figure the rest out, right? The rest of the pyramid. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us make dua in a way that it's very open and very conversational with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, say it in our own language, no formalities, and really be vulnerable, because that will help us through traumatic situations if we always have that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because people might not understand your situation, but Allah is always there, and when you open up to Him, it's already even if your request hasn't been accepted, it's already successful. The moment you start talking to Allah, there's no losing situation. It's already win-win situation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make of those who make good du'as and talk to Him and accept from us. And we'll just end with the du'a again. Allahumma inni zalamtu nafsi dhulman kathiran wa la yaghfiru dhunuba illa ant faghfir li maghfiratan min indik warhamni innaka antal ghafurur rahim. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakallah khair.